Hello, I'm Jacqueline Holstead, and you are listening to On Point Conversations. In this podcast series, we share creative marketing, content, and branding strategies that help your business successfully navigate the new normal marketing environment. And I am Jacqueline Holstead, and you are, of course, listening to On Point Conversations. And my business, if you want to get a hold of me, is On Point Thinking. I'm at onpointthinking.com. I have a website and I have a contact page, and you are welcome to contact me with questions, with advice, or with something you want me to share on my particular podcast to talk about, or if you want advice for some project. I'm all about marketing. But I'm also marketing, team building. I've done public relations. I've done media buying. I've done a variety of things. So my background is very general. Today, and I've worked with very, very large companies and very small companies. I've worked for companies like HP, Microsoft, LaCie, large companies, and then very small companies that you probably haven't heard of. Today, I want to talk about, well, I don't necessarily want to talk about it. It's a hard subject, and that is layoffs. Most companies I know they don't want to do layoffs. They want to do everything they can to avoid layoffs. So the first thing that I do with my clients, when there's an anticipation of a downturn in the market and it is not something you see normally in your business. For example, there are ups and downs and trending within certain businesses. So you want to know what the trend reports are when you look at financials. And where you were last year, where you are this year. You're going to look greatly at the marketplace, include your marketing people to find out what's happening, if there's really been a downturn. Look at all the things happening around you, look at your competition, and really take a close look at why this is happening. Usually the first thing we look at is we do a review. So is there a way to streamline a process or processes? Because sometimes processes get very convoluted and they get intense, and when one error is made and something's put in place for that, and it's really not necessary. So the first thing we do is streamline processes. Then we look at, is there any automation that we can do to help automate the systems so that it's a lot easier and it's not as labor intensive. And then another thing that I've seen happen is we look at product lines. Sometimes companies have so many SKUs and they're not selling. They don't need that many SKUs. They don't need to have that much inventory. So they look at where can they cut SKUs. So you'll need to look at your sales, look at the trending to make sure that isn't going to sell better in the summer or better in the winter, and then look at that. But I'm suggesting that you look at your own company first before you decide on layoffs, because the layoffs hurt companies and even people that are still there after the layoff. So one question I get asked is, can you preserve the best of what you've already built, even though you have to go through a layoff? And you probably, if you've listened to the news or looked on LinkedIn or been in the social media, every week it seems there's some announcement of company layoffs. In just the first few months of 2023, actually the first month of 2023, the number of layoffs in the United States equaled the total number of layoffs that occurred in the heart of the 2020 pandemic. So what we know of would be about 70,000 employees. And it's no longer confined to just the tech sector. Those layoffs are happening across a wide range of industries. So why do people look at layoffs first? Well, they see it as a quick and easy way to cut costs in an uncertain economy. But at what cost to surviving employees and culture? Because mass layoffs affect not only those who lose their jobs, but also those who are left behind. There's studies on all of these. I don't have the necessary resource on these, but I looked at some studies on layoffs, and they find that layoff survivors experience a substantial decline in job satisfaction by 41%. Job performance by 20% decline, and intent to stay declines by 36%. So if you look at just a 1% workforce layoff, that can result in a 31% increase in voluntary turnover. So you're not only weeding out those people that you laid off, but you're going to lose some key talent too, because they're not going to be wanting to be in an environment where they don't know if they have a job from the day to the next. And it's much better to negotiate for a new job when you have a job. Other impacts of layoffs include disengagement, lower work quality, and reduced innovation. That said, you know that an organization's reputation can be very damaging during layoffs. And that makes it very difficult to retain and also to attract talent for needed roles. So layoffs are incredibly hard. And companies really need to work even harder to sustain their company culture when they have layoffs. And they would need to take care of the people after a layoff. Now, you want to take care of the people that are laid off, and I'm going to go and talk about the prioritizing the people and preserve culture after layoffs. Because the layoffs, if they've happened, they've happened. One, you want to be transparent and empathetic. Now, sometimes layoffs are announced to employees with no reason or insight into the decision making. Many times you will notice things in a company if you're if you're in the office, basically. But if you're also watching, you'll see, if you see any financials, you'll see a decline. You'll see people kind of just change attitudes. So watch for that. But also, if you have and you're still there, you need to give some insight into that decision making, even if you can't go into specific details, because I know there are many times I've laid off people and I can't go into specific details or I can't give out too much information, but I can let employees understand why the layoff was necessary. Take responsibility for the layoffs and outline what is being done to prevent them in the future so that the people who are staying feel that there's some stable environment. One of the things that leaders really need to do too is show empathy in your communication. That's critical, both to those who've been laid off as well as employees who weren't. What you say and how you say it is crucial in helping your people move forward. The other one is follow up with the people that are still there. How are those who are still there feeling about the company? And they may or may not tell you at this point because they're concerned about being laid off. But they might tell you what they're worrying about. You can help your leaders support their teams through the aftershocks of a layoff with information and resources. And then also, what generally happens after a layoff, there are changes. In fact, generally, mostly, there are changes. So include all levels of your leaders in change management plans. Not just informing them, but have them involved. Because leaders of new changes will help them understand and support them, and it's a better rollout to their teams. So go beyond issuing orders or talking points and create the understanding for leaders so they can show the change with confidence in their voice. The third part is you do want to maintain the employee experience. If your departing employees carry your reputation with them, which they do all you can to create a supported, positive separation experience. Now, that's very difficult because some people will be very angry. Some people will be very sad. Some people will have a difficult time, especially if they're over the age of where there's age discrimination. That's another thing. And so while you may be cutting costs, there are simple, no-cost things you can do to maintain a culture of high care and trust. Do things like get an outplacement service. That might cost you some money, but it's better in the long run for your reputation. If you have an HR department, figure out how they can be replacement specialists, resume editors, or interview coaches. And make sure that if you have an HR team, they adopt a high care approach to the separation. Do something face-to-face, like sessions for Q&A about separation details. That can create a more personalized approach in a difficult life moment. For those who stay, clear communication, one-to-ones with employees, connecting to your purpose, showing appreciation, and listening to and acting on their feedback and suggestions can help maintain a positive employee experience. Show appreciation. Now that's something people say, well, I show appreciation all the time. but it's showing appreciation, that heartfelt, genuine, personal appreciation for your employees who are going to continue with you after the layoffs and who will depend on you to keep things going. So a message that occupies a sincere gesture of thanks for their understanding and continued contributions can go a long way to assure them that they are valued. And make these appreciation comments as individual as you can for the individual. If you just do an overall press release on how you appreciate employees, you're not going to get as far as if you can be very, very specific. And your team leaders can and your management can. They should be able to. Because cutting recognition during a crisis can lead to about 49% decrease in engagement and 20% higher intent to leave the organization. So it really reinforces the message that the organization is not focused on people as a priority. So if you haven't focused on your people as a priority before, now is the time to make a great change. Now is also time to show a lot more empathy towards employees. It's also a time to really look at your culture. Is your culture a growing, healing, thoughtful process? Because sometimes companies can do nothing else but lay people off. They thought they were going to have a very healthy product. They thought the market was going to do a certain thing. There was a downturn in the market, and it just happens. But there are ways you can help. And I have seen companies, especially larger companies, who give lip service to helping find new jobs for their people who've been laid off, and usually nothing happens. Or they might take a resume and give you a standard form and say, here, fill in your information in this form. Well, that's not really helping. We're talking about really individualized help. And yes, it's going to cost money. And yes, it's going to cost resources. But understand that your reputation and the employees that are left behind are going to see that. And they're going to listen to that, especially if they're, and I said this before, but if they're one of the people that was laid off is a close team member, greatly liked. Everyone depended on that person. Now all of a sudden, who do they depend on? Where do they go? Also, layoffs leave gaps. Generally, they leave gaps unless you've really overstaffed. And I would caution against overstaffing, of course. But if you have laid off someone, generally their team is going to have a hole. They're going to have something that needs to be filled, and that's where the change management comes in. What are you going to change the process? How are you going to not just dump a lot more work on the people that are already there? Because that'll be their other concern is, am I going to now have to take over everything and have a bigger workload than I did before because someone's been laid off or a group has been laid off? The fifth thing I want to cover is heal and strengthen your community and belonging. No matter what side of the layoff employees land on, every employee will question if their job is safe and if their company really cares about them. So look at really how you can enhance well-being. Communicating often is a good one. Include moments of recognition, connect them and their work to the organization, your purpose and their teams. Look at communicate shared goals and your commitment to them and continue to build camaraderie, trust, and unity as you move forward. I think, too, just to approach on this subject, because of layoffs, trust can be broken, especially if it came as a big surprise. And sometimes it's difficult to pre-announce layoffs because then everybody's worried about who's going to be laid off. And you also don't want to just, as some of the larger companies have been doing, send an email and saying you're laid off. You no longer have a password. You're just cut out without any explanation. That is really damaging to the company and to the people that got laid off and the people that are still staying because they know that the company doesn't care one way or the other whether they're there or not. So it's a big job. And even though you think, well, I've laid off and now I'm going to save some money, you might have to spend money in the process to keep your reputation in line. Thank you, and I hope this helps you. Again, I'm at onpointthinking.com, and you can send me your comments, and I'm happy to talk with you and share with you. If you have ideas for my podcast, I always like to hear those too. Again, thanks, and have a really great day. Thank you for listening, and I invite you to join me next week as we talk more about specific actions you can take to reach your own business goals. You can find my library of other inspiring podcasts like this one at onpointthinking.com. Again, thank you for listening. This is Jacqueline Holstead at On Point Conversations.